and all you see is the back doors of that guy's trailer in front of you, 4 feet away from you, and it's like, I tell you what, both feet just flat onto the brakes as hard as you can go.
Breaker, this is the truck and tanker Yanker. I'm 10-8 with my 10 in the wind, my heaters are glowing, my manners are showing. Wind her up and let her go, come on. I'm your travel agent with a story to tell. Let's go for a ride.
Hey, it's your truck and tanker Yanker. It's night right now, and it's the end of my shift, and that's why I might seem a little tired. I'm going to talk about falling asleep at the wheel and talk about just driving tired in general. Many people don't realize that truck drivers, we spend 14 hours a day, in times past a lot more, working every day. The law allows us to work 14 hours in a day and 70 hours in 5 days. In 7 days, you can work a total of 84 hours if you take a 34-hour restart. So your average truck driver works more than, obviously, 40 hours a week than what most people do. And if you can imagine what it's like going to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, getting home at 5 o'clock at night, or working an 8-hour shift, basically, is what I'm saying. If you can imagine how tired you feel like that, imagine after 14 hours of intermittent hard work, unloading a trailer, and hours of sitting and staring at the road and trying to be alert and paying attention. Because I'll tell you one thing, when you're on the highway, you actually have to anticipate what other people are doing. And I let my steering wheel figure pretty prominently in this picture here, because I'm going to talk about this steering wheel. Now, don't forget to subscribe, give her a thumbs up, ring the bell, tell us you like us. As a matter of fact, leave a comment, ask a question. I can deal with questions and comments and that type of thing. But back in 1990, my brother and I used to run team together, and we'd start where we lived, was in Salem, Oregon at the time, and we would drive up to Seattle, which is where our truck was parked, and we'd do that on a Sunday night. And I mean Sunday night, early Monday morning. Well, he and I were both of the same mind, and that was, when you're at home, you're awake, and then we'll get caught up on sleep when we get on the road. Well, what happened was we'd take turns driving up to Seattle to where our truck was, and then the other guy would try to sleep as best as he could, while the other guy's trying to stay awake, get to Seattle in his own car or pickup. And that's so we'd leave the house probably, it was usually sometime around 11 p.m. Midnight on Sunday night, so that we could leave the yard in Seattle by 3:30 a.m. or 4 o'clock a.m. Out of Seattle. And so the first trying to stay awake was just getting to Seattle, and we'd take turns doing that, and the other guy had to sleep. Well, as many of you know, the best way to stay awake is to have a lot of cold air blowing in your face. So while the one guy's driving up to Seattle with a lot of cold air blowing in, the other guy's trying to sleep while he's freezing to death. It didn't work out very good. So neither one of us ever got very much sleep on the way up to Seattle. But whoever was the one that was trying to sleep on the way to Seattle was the one that got to drive out of Seattle. So we were headed for Morgan, Utah, if I remember right. And it was something that we did, I think, 3 times a week from Seattle. And we just went from Seattle to Morgan, Utah, back to Seattle, and did that 3 times. And we switched trailers with somebody in Morgan, Utah. And so the guy driving out of Seattle, once he got kind of settled in, and we get over Snoqualmie Pass, and the other guy would be sleeping away in the sleeper. And I tell you what, when the sun started to come up, and we might be somewhere near Prosser, Washington, or Yakima, Washington, somewhere in that neighborhood, when the sun was coming up, just depending on when we left. And as the sun's coming up, I tell you what, when it's hitting you right in the eyes and you're already tired, for me, that's the worst time of day to stay awake. And I could bob my head all in the dark, and then once the sun started coming up, I had it. I couldn't take it. I'm driving over both lines, and you can't do that when the traffic's heavy. And so I'd holler back at my brother, and I'd say, "David, I need an hour." and I'd have to kind of roust him up because he only been there a couple hours sleeping himself, and so he would get up and I'd go back into sleeper, and that's about all he could give me was an hour, because he would start bobbing after about an hour, and he'd yell at me, "Hey Dennis, it's your turn." Anyway, we do that in our first shift all the way to, I think it was probably about Black Canyon, Idaho, where we finally started getting back into our groove, and I think that's where he took over, was at Black Canyon. He finally got enough sleep that he could carry on the rest of the trip. But that was always really rough. That was in the early 90s. My brother and I run team together, and you know, many's the time that I've slept on my steering wheel, and that's the reason why you can see my steering wheel right here. And I tell you what, this truck here has got a hair-triggered steering wheel horn button. That's a city horn there. Well, I used to drive a Volvo, and a Volvo, that was where the air horn, now you hear my air horn up there. That's where the string is up there. And on a Kenworth, the string is usually over here, and the Peterbilt's got the string over there too, but I think they may have changed them since then, I don't know. But on the Volvo, the air horn was right where your city horn is, and then your city horn was on the edges. But anyway, this one here's got such a hair trigger, I can't do what I used to do in the Volvo, because I'd only get about a minute's worth of rest if I stuck my forehead in the middle of that horn right here. But that's what I used to do in the Volvo. I would just stick my head right down here in the middle of the steering wheel, just like that, rest my head on the horn button, and about the time my muscles let go in the neck, so that the full weight of my head rested on the horn, the air horn would blow. That would give me 15 minutes of nap. I can't even tell you how many times in the last 35 years I've slept 10 and 15 minutes at a time in the middle of my steering wheel. And there have been times when I've done a full, well, back in the day when all we was required was an 8-hour break for rest. Now it's here some years ago, I don't know how many years ago, 8 years ago or so, they require a 10-hour rest break, but it used to be an 8-hour rest break. And I can't tell you how many times I've actually slept for 8 hours on my steering wheel because I drove a day cab at that time, or something along those lines. Well, you know, many's the time where you just put your hands together like this and try to rest your head on your arms and your hands like that, just to get some sleep, whether it be an hour, whether it be 15 minutes, whether it be 10 minutes. And a few times when I was in a day cab and it was a whole 8-hour break right there on my steering wheel. And I tell you what, I'm getting too old for that now, because I tell you what, if I was asleep 8 hours or 10 hours on my steering wheel now, I would definitely have a crick in my back, and I'd have to do a workman's comp claim or something like that, because there isn't any way I can do that and survive. I was young when I did that. But I wanted to tell you about that one time well, it's not one time. It's happened a number of times. You pull into what we call a pickle park or a rest area. Somebody asked me once on the CB radio, what do you call a pickle park for? And it says, well, that's where I park my pickle. Whatever. Anyway, I don't know what a pickle is, but just take your pick. So anyway, you go into a rest area, and oft times in the middle of the night when you're doing night shifts and things like that, the rest areas are plumb crowded already. Especially, well, those of you in the East, you know that in the East, rest areas plug up really quick. In the West, maybe not so quick, but you know, they can get pretty plugged up by 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, mountain time. So anyway, went into a rest area, and it was already plugged up, so there's already trucks parked along the edge, and all the parking spots are taken up. So now you got them all parked along the edge, and you just pull up behind some other guy. Well, I was driving a cab over this one time, a 79 Freightliner, and so I'm pulled up maybe about 4 feet from the trailer of the guy in front of me, and I'm just so tired, and I have to rest my head a little bit, and I just do it like this, just stick my head on my arms and just take a little rest, just like that. Probably not more than about 15 minutes goes by, and you just sort of look up, and it's like you're just dazed and confused because you're so tired, and you look up, and all you see is the back doors of that guy's trailer in front of you, 4 feet away from you, and it's like, I tell you what, both feet just flat onto the brakes as hard as you can go. And it's like, you can always tell the guy that's been sleeping on his steering wheel in a rest area. You'll just hear the brakes all of a sudden start, and I can't tell you how many times that's happened in the past. But you know, a lot of times you know, even truck drivers that do this for a living and that type of thing can just get ended up in the median or the borrow pit upside down. But I can think of one time when my brother and I was running a team together, and we were probably we went to the top of Cabbage Hill. I think it was in the area of Dead Man's Pass, if anybody's familiar with that in Oregon. And it was a cold, frosty morning, and I think we were the first guys up to this wreck. Nobody else had stopped yet, and it was a four-wheeler upside down in the median, and the guy was sitting on the shoulder of the road, looking really dazed and confused. We pulled over, and it was just after daybreak, and we pulled over, and this car was upside down, and the guy obviously had a broken wrist, and so we walked up to him and was asking him if he's okay. And you know, you just try to talk to the guy, asking if he's okay. You don't believe anything an injured person says, because they can be feeling fine at the moment because of adrenaline and fall over dead within 5 minutes, you know. But it's just a matter of talking to him, trying to assess his injuries and that type of thing. Well, I saw his car. It was a young fella, probably 20-ish or something like that, and his car was upside down, and it looked like everything he owned in the world was in that car. And it was that time of year, probably around Christmas break. He's probably either going to school or coming from school, and but we didn't know if there was anybody else in the car, so we were asking him, is there anybody else in the car? And he said no, but he just was really dazed. So, well, I tell you what, like I said, everything he owned in the world, I think, was in that car, because I had to sort through it, trying to make sure there wasn't anybody else underneath all of it, because that's going to happen, you know, in a car wreck situation like that. People, you know, you've probably seen big trucks on the side of the sleeper. It says right on it, check the sleeper in case of an emergency, because driver's not liable to be coherent enough to answer your questions on that one. But yeah, driving while you're sleepy, you know, many's the time when it's like you need to know when to, it's just like, know what your limit is. You got to pull over, hit a wide spot, hit a rest area, hit the pickle park, hit whatever it is you got to hit, and get whatever it is that you need for rest. You know, and that's one of our company policies where I work, is it says right in the driver's handbook that there isn't anything so important that you can't pull over and get a nap. Now, of course, they want us to get our full sleep and rest when we're supposed to do it, but in a perfect world, that doesn't always happen. And so it's best to know your limit, and when you start bouncing around, it's best to pull over. Not try to get that extra 20, 30, 50, 100 miles. You know, today we got the day and age of energy drinks and all that kind of stuff. Yep, but you know, go for it. Get an energy drink, get a cup of coffee, whatever it's going to take. Just get out, walk around, go cool off your brakes, whatever it takes. Just open the window up a little bit. I was at one situation in northern Wyoming on I-90, and it was just across the border from Montana into Wyoming, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I saw something that was odd, which was, I was getting ready to go over the first exit and the little viaduct that goes over the crossroad underneath there, and it looked like a vehicle on the back side of the guardrail that kept people from driving down onto the road from the interstate in case they had a situation. The vehicle was on the back side of the guardrail, not on the highway side of the guardrail, but the other side of the guardrail. Now, as I got closer there, and I could see that there was one headlight that worked still, and it was on, and the vehicle was kind of at an angle, and the front end was all crumpled up on the vehicle. Well, not a whole lot of traffic out there, especially at 2 o'clock in the morning, so I pulled over to go see what happened. And I was, because it was in the median, I actually pulled, I had my four-ways on, and I pulled onto the shoulder of the median side of on the hammer lane, and I pulled over there, and And I got out, and there was a great big guy in the front of this, looked like a little S10, I guess it was a Blazer or something like that, an older one, I guess, and not our 70s, but like a early 90s, so it was kind of small. It was a big guy, and it wasn't that big a SUV type car. Anyway, he was laying across well, his face was up against the passenger side window, and his eyes were all rolled back in his head, and his doors were all locked, and he had his radio on full blast. I knew he was tired and trying to stay awake and lost it. So I knocked on the window and I said, "Hey buddy, you okay?" And his eyes just kind of kept rolling back in his head. And I'm like, and he couldn't talk. And I didn't know what was wrong with him. He looked like he was at least 300 pounds, maybe better. And so I couldn't tell by the way he was sitting there if he was in rough shape or what, but he definitely was out of it. So I went and called emergency services, and because it's a pretty remote area, it took a little bit. So I stood there at the window and kept talking to him through the window, because even if I could reach the guy, I wasn't gonna like drag him around or something like that. He has a broken back. You're liable to do a whole lot more worse trouble to him if you start dragging somebody around with a broken neck or a broken back. It's best to leave him shaped like that until somebody shows up that can strap him to a board and immobilize him and that type of thing. So anyway, the emergency services finally showed up, and it took about 6 guys to get him out of that vehicle, because they stuck a backboard in they had to go in through the hatch in the back, shoved it all the way up to the front, and I don't know how, because I wasn't even part of that. They got him onto the board, strapped onto the board, and then but it was a lot of work to get that guy out the back of that little SUV, I'll tell you what. And they finally got the guy out of there. Well, come to find out, he was actually, the reason why he hit the backside of that guardrail is because he was going the other way on the interstate. He was going westbound, I was going eastbound. And he had lost control, or fell asleep at the wheel and lost control, and went shot down through the median, and then hit the backside of the guardrail on my side. Anyway, yeah, it was, I hope the guy did okay. Never heard from anybody, as far as nobody ever contacted me to pass that point. But it was a good thing I was there, because the guy could have sat there for quite a while before somebody showed up, because as long as I was there, no other cars went by. And that was probably in the late 90s. Back then, there wasn't that much traffic on I-90 in Montana, Wyoming. Probably a good deal more now. Probably somebody shows up there about every 2 minutes now. But back in the late 90s, it was a lot less traffic. But anyway, that's pretty much it for sleeping on the steering wheel. But you want to just be safe out there, and try to get your rest when you can. And this is like I'm going to be doing as soon as I turn this video player off. I'm going to go and lay down, and I'll probably read a book for a little while, and then I'm going to go to sleep until the morning when I can load where I'm at here. So, and that's what a lot of guys do. But I just ask if you subscribe and give her a thumbs up, leave a comment, ring our bell, let us know what you think of this content, and because we just want to encourage people to do the safe thing when they're out on the highway, and give a different way of looking at things from a truck driver's perspective, for people that aren't familiar with what we do, and being safe around big trucks. Just seen somebody tonight, just another person hanging on my right side when I moved over to the hammer lane to let them out onto the interstate, and then they just hung there. And it's like, my truck is governed at 64 miles an hour. I can't go any faster. It won't go any faster unless I'm going downhill. And it was on flat ground. And a lot of people just think that we can just race ahead like a four-wheeler, and we can't. And a lot of companies have their trucks governed. And I'll tell you what, I'm glad my truck's governed, because I got a lead foot. And if I did not have a governed truck, I'd probably be in trouble all the time. I'd have to use my cruise control more, I'll tell you that much, because, like I say, I got a lead foot. But just be safe out there. If you have any questions, we can put your questions up here on the video and answer them as best as I can. If you got a question about trucking industry, you got a technical question about, or you're a driver and you just want from my years of experience, I'm always handing out advice to anybody. And but if just subscribe, ring the bell, thumbs up. Hey, just take it easy. Keep the shiny side up and the dirty side down. Look beyond your hood ornament and don't be a bumper sticker because it's unprofessional. I'm the Truck and Tanker Yanker. We gone.